Britain. Let's speak to Bill Browder, author of Red Notice, How I Became Putin's #1 Enemy. Bill, thanks for your time. I want to start first with the reaction of the British government so far, bearing in mind that there is no evidence, they say, that the Russians are involved at all here.
Well, at this point, we're still very early days into exactly what happened, and so I don't think there can be any concrete reaction. But I have to say that there is a very bad precedent, which is the British government's reaction to the Litvinenko poisoning, in which it was proven that the Russian government, the Russian FSB, their secret police, was involved in a nuclear assassination on British soil. And there was no reaction, there was no British government reaction to that, which basically gave Putin the green light to do whatever he wanted to do. And all the circumstantial evidence at this point points to Vladimir Putin. And so what I can say is that if there isn't an absolutely devastating reaction after this incident, I don't know what to say, because it will basically create the Russian killing fields in the UK by giving a green light to Putin.
What do you mean by a devastating reaction?
Well, the one thing that Vladimir Putin and everybody in his regime is most sensitive to is the fact that these people have stolen an enormous amount of money from Russia, and they keep it in the West, and they particularly keep it in the UK. It's no secret that Russian government officials and high-level oligarchs connected to those officials have very expensive properties in London. And one big point of leverage that we have here is to seize those properties, and one can do it legally connected to the Magnitsky Act, which basically sanctions human rights abusers.
In terms of the Magnitsky Act, the Chancellor, Philip Hammond, on television this morning, when asked about whether it's something we should actually legislate in this country, said we don't need to. We have those powers already. It's something that the Home Secretary could do, strip people of visas and things like that. So why aren't we doing it? Well,
the answer is that it's sort of an empty statement that they've been making for years and years and years. And in the process of making that empty statement, they've done nothing. That Russians have run amok here, Russian criminals, Russian human rights abusers. This is their haven. They're not prosecuted. Their assets are safe. They're able to travel here freely. And so that's a terrible, disingenuous statement which means nothing. And I only have some comfort that there are many members of Parliament, both in the Conservatives, in the Labour, and the other opposition parties that don't believe that statement and want to legislate to put in place a Magnitsky Act.
You write in the newspapers today that it is no exaggeration that I am top of Putin's hit list. Are you concerned about being in this country?
Well, I'm concerned about being in this country if this country allows people to get away, allows Vladimir Putin and his regime to get away with murder. Of course I'm concerned.
Which there's no evidence for at this stage in this case.
Well, there's evidence that he got away with murder in the Litvinenko case, and nothing was done about it. There's also another case involving a whistleblower, a Russian whistleblower named Alexander Parapolichny, who was jogging outside his home in Surrey, who dropped dead, and there was no proper murder investigation. And so what I have to say is there is a pattern of non-response and non-investigation in many murders or many deaths involving Russians in this country. And so I think that there needs to be a root and branch change to how Britain responds to Russian aggression on British soil.
But do you feel safe?
I do not feel safe knowing that there is a government policy to let people get away with murder in this country.
Theresa May's letter to Marina Litvinenko, we spoke to her a bit earlier, says, whilst we have to have a form of relationship with Russia, it is guarded, it is heavily conditioned. We do it with clear eyes and a very cold heart. Do you think the Prime Minister's clear-eyed and cold-hearted when it comes to Russia? Well,
she apparently wasn't after Alexander Litvinenko was murdered, because nothing happened. So it was proven that there was a Russian government assassination in the UK, in London, using nuclear materials, and nothing happened. Theresa May said that the Prime Minister will bring it up with Putin when they next meet. That is not a consequence. Putin is just laughing at us with that kind of consequence.
But I mean, why would he do it again? What you know? People have said the Russian elections coming up. He is going to win those. He doesn't need a propaganda win at this point in time. Why would he risk doing this?
Well, what you have to do is understand what Putin is dealing with. This is not about us. this is probably not so much about Mr. Skripal. This is about all of the people in the KGB, or the FSB as they call it now, in the Interior Ministry, their security forces, in the Army, who are potentially other disloyal people. And what this is doing, what this action does, is by going after Mr. Skripal and his daughter, and possibly other members of his family in this way, it sends a message to everybody else in his own security services that if you are disloyal, terrible, terrible things will happen to you wherever you are in the world, and they won't just happen to you, they will happen to members of your family.
Which he has been quoted on before. And again, let's just reiterate that the official government line is that there is no evidence that that's the case at this point. I just want to ask you one final question regarding front pages of some of the newspapers this morning. £800,000, more than £800,000, donated to the Conservative Party by what is claimed are Russian oligarchs. Do you think that money should be returned? Is the vetting process strong enough?
Well, I think that any money, as Marina Litvinenko so eloquently put it earlier today, these people weren't donating the money for charitable purposes. They were donating the money for some other purpose, which is basically to have influence. And I've seen it in the Magnitsky case, where people who were directly involved in the conspiracy that led to the murder of my lawyer, Sergei Magnitsky, were paying money in this country to members of the House of Lords to keep their names off of sanctions lists. And so I think there's a real problem with dirty Russian money affecting politics in this country, 100%.